Welcome back, students. We're going to continue with lesson 6.1, and instead of ratios we're going to talk about rates and unit rates today on day 2 of this lesson. So the objective of this lesson is that you will be able to write and label a rate and be able to convert rates into unit rates. Well, in our last video, we learned about what a ratio does. And the important thing about a ratio is that it compares two quantities by using division or the vinculum. And a rate is kind of like a ratio. In fact, it's a special type of ratio that compares quantities that are in different units. So this is the main thing I want you to remember. A rate compares two quantities that are different units. Here are a couple good examples. 700 words per 3 pages. Words per page. 80 yards per 10 seconds. Yards per second. Yards and seconds, very different. Very different. Words and pages, different. Very different. So we're going to write a rate to describe the situation below. Now, when you write a rate, you have a choice. You can put the first quantity on top or the second quantity on top. And there's no right or wrong way. It's just that some make more sense. I always, when I do a rate, I remember the word per. So I say to myself, eggs, that's my label, per dollar. Or does it make sense to say dollar first and go like this, $1.19 per, a dozen means 12, per 12 eggs. And I would say this one makes more sense, dollar per egg or per eggs. So there's my rate, $1.19 for or per 12 eggs. My next one has students and buses. Does it make sense to say students per bus or bus per student? I would say the first one, 120 students per 3 buses. I've just made a rate and it makes sense, students per bus. Alright, I said that we were going to talk about unit rates. Unit rates are still rates, but they're a special type of rate with the denominator of 1. And that's important. We want to know how much for 1 unit. So here are a couple great examples. We start with 80 yards per, this line means per, 10 seconds. Well, how many yards could we have for in 1 second? Well, what we're going to do is reduce and cross those zeros off, and we get 8 over 1. And we label it. So this reads 8 yards per second. So 8 yards for 1 second. Now it's called a unit rate. Okay? It's a unit rate because we have a 1 in the denominator. Let's look at here. We have 140 heartbeats in 2 minutes. How many in 1 minute? So we reduce by dividing by 2, and we get 70 on top, and we get 1 on bottom, which is what we need. So 70 heartbeats for 1 minute. So let's practice with a couple. A skydiver falls 144 feet in 3 seconds. So I'm saying to myself, feet per second. That makes sense to me. So I'm going to put 144 on top, label it, and then I'm going to put 3 seconds on bottom. Now, if you ever want to find a unit rate, one way you can always do it is do top, write this down, top divided by the bottom. That will always give you the unit rate. So I'm going to divide 144 by 3. I got 48, and now this is the important part. Label that. Feet, because that's on top, per, this line means per, 1 second. Because I divided the bottom by 3 and the top by 3, now I have a 1 in the denominator. So it is now a unit rate. 48 feet per second is how fast the skydiver is falling. Well, now we have a car traveling 676 miles and 13 hours. So to find a unit rate, I'm going to divide the top and bottom by 13, or really all you're doing is dividing the top by 13. But in a way you're dividing the bottom by 13 because you need to get 1 hour on the bottom. So let's do 676 divided by 13. Well, if you look over here, we got 52 miles per 1 hour. So basically, what we really have here is 52 miles per hour. That's what that implies. In 1 hour, it could go 52 miles. All right, so the question is, what is unit price? Well, unit price is like a unit rate, and it's a type of unit rate that tells you the cost per 1 unit of what you want to buy. And when we do this, we always compare the price per 1 unit. We always break it down to find out how much 1 unit is, because if you do that with both items, you can tell what's cheaper. And why do we do it? Well, because a unit price is a good way to find out which one's a better buy. If I know that one item is 15 cents per ounce, and I know the other item is 28 cents per ounce, then I'm going to go with this one, the cheaper one, the 15 cent per ounce. But it might not be that easy to see if you don't know how much 1 ounce is. Once we find out what 1 ounce is, well, then we can compare them. A good example is right here. Find the better buy. We have 2 liters of milk for $3.80, or 1.5 liters of milk for $2.70. So what we want to do is find out which one's cheaper per liter. So we're going to find the unit rate. The first thing we want to do is we always put the money on top. Money divided by the unit, okay, or your quantity, what you have. So we are going to do 380 divided by 2, and that's liters. Then we're going to, over here, do $2.70 divided by 1.5 liters. All right, so get a calculator out. Well, on this we don't need a calculator. We can just say 2 goes into 3 one time, and we get 1. And then we keep doing this, and we get 1.9. So I'm going to add a 0 here. So $1.90 for 1 liter. It's important that we get the denominator on the bottom of 1. So $1.90 for 1. Now over here, I'm going to do $2.70 divided by 1.5. And when I do that, I get $1.80 for 1 liter. So which one's cheaper? I would say that this one right here, that this one is cheaper because it's only $1.80 for 1 liter, and this is $1.90. So this would be the better one to buy. You get a little less milk, but you're getting it cheaper per liter. Now let's set this one up with a pencil. So remember, we always put the dollars on top, and then we put the unit or how many we have on bottom. So 10 pencils. All right, then we set up this one. Same way, $2.70. Money's always on top over 6 pencils. Now, we're going to make a unit rate to find out how much 1 pencil is. And we're going to divide the top divided by the bottom. So we're going to do 4 divided by 10. And when you divide by 10, all you have to do is move that decimal over. So we find out it's 40 cents for one pencil. Now I'm going to do it again. This time I'm going to take $2.70 and divide by 6. And when I do that, I get 45 cents for one pencil. So which one's cheaper? Well, the one that's cheaper is on the left here. So this one is cheaper. So I would say 10 pencils. My answer would be 10 pencils for $4 is cheaper. That is cheaper than the other one. All right, a few examples of applying these to real life situations. Mika can make 6 bracelets in a half hour, per half hour. How many bracelets can she make in an hour? So I'm going to set up a rate and go 6 bracelets in 0.5 hours. And the question is, how many can she make in 1 hour? Well, it's so important to label here. Because I wrote hours on the bottom, I am going to write hours on the bottom here and treat this like a fraction. And I'm going to say to myself, what do I multiply to 0.5 to make it 1? And I multiply by 2. 2 times a half, 2 halves, make a whole. Whatever I do on the bottom, I'll do on the top. 2 times 6 is 12. So she could make 12 bracelets. That's my answer, 12 bracelets. Now let's look at our next example with Melissa. She's driving to her grandmother's house. In the first 3 hours of the drive, she travels 159 miles. So what I'm going to do right away is going to stop. I'm going to make a ratio. I'm going to think of miles per hour. So I'm going 159 miles in 3 hours. So that's her rate to start with. What is her average speed? So they want to find the unit rate here, the miles per hour. So remember, we're going to divide, divide top divided by bottom. So 3 goes into 15 5 times, 3 goes into 9 3 times. So my answer is 53, remember to label, miles per, this line means per, or you can actually write per 1 hour. It's 1 hour because what we really did was we divided the bottom by 3 and the top by 3 to reduce it. All right, on our last one we have kind of a consumer thing. We're going to try and figure out what's cheaper. Now, a little late for Valentine's Day, but maybe you're buying flowers for something. A half dozen carnations is $4.75. So remember, we almost always put money on top. And a half dozen, a dozen is 12, half of 12 is 6. So this means 6. So 6 carnations. Carnations are flowers. Okay. Now I'm going to find out the unit rate for one of those, for one carnation. Then over here I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do $9.24. And that's for a dozen. So that's for 12. And find out that unit rate. How much for one carnation? Okay, so let's do this. 475 divided by 6. And we get 0.79. And then there's a 1 and a 6 repeating. Okay, now on this side, I'm going to do $9.24, and I'm going to divide that by 12, which is a dozen. And I get 0.77. So I look and I see 79 cents or 77 cents per flower. I think this one's cheaper by 2 cents, which doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're ordering a bunch of flowers for like a whole school or something, it would be. So this one is cheaper. Always pick the one with the cheaper price. Okay, well, set up your practice problems and try those and bring any questions you have to class tomorrow. Take care.